Hi there, and welcome to Ian's Engage channel. I'm Ian. In a previous video, I showed how I built a new test track, which would allow me to play while I took on the stressful task of beginning to build Shelfington proper. In this video, I'm going to procrastinate just one more time and describe how I intend to take on what I consider to be the trickiest part of the build. So, what the heck am I talking about? Well, I'm trying to work out the best way to install the track work behind the scenic breakboard. As I've talked about previously, getting this right is essential, as all of the track in front of the scenic breakboard, as well as the accurate positioning of the inclines, depend on where the track behind the scenic breakboard is positioned. What has given me pause for thought is that there are two areas of particularly complicated point work, which require servos to be installed to operate the points. The servos will be placed into custom-made servo enclosure boxes, which I will design and make and then embed within the foam. I'll then run control rods inside brass tubing from the servo to the tie bar of each point. Obviously, wiring needs to be taken into account too, with dropper wires and servo motor wiring needed to be plumbed in. All of these things need to be installed on a quite narrow piece of baseboard, with very little room to spare, as the scenic breakboard channel needs to remain unobstructed. To make things even more complicated, all of these things need to happen at the rear of the layout, where access is restricted as the area is rather difficult to reach. So, that's why I'm calling it tricky. As you're probably aware, I've been mulling this problem over for weeks, if not months, but I think I've come up with a strategy that will allow me to solve all of the issues, and I thought it may be useful to share my thought process. If truth be told, I'm also probably making this video to reassure myself that the strategy will actually work, but please let me know if you can foresee any issues. I think that the problem of accessibility can easily be solved by installing the track, servo enclosures, servos and point linkage hardware away from the layout. However, going down that route introduces a different pair of problems. Firstly, how on earth can I transport an area of the layout that is over 8 feet in length between the train room and a new, more installation-friendly work area? Secondly, where is this new work area? I don't have a space available anywhere to work on something so large. So, my thinking is that if I don't have the space, I'll need to split the large area into smaller sections that I can work on at my existing workbench, which is more commonly known as my dining room table. Using this approach will allow me to complete each small section before bringing it back to the train room and adding it to the larger area. As it turns out, the area lends itself to being split into 5 logical sections. I've numbered the sections 1 to 5 from left to right. Section 1 is a simple section containing no points or electronics that brings the track from behind the scenic breakboard to the front of the layout. Section 2 is very different. It contains a rather complicated track arrangement containing multiple points and will require multiple servos to be installed. It also has 2 tracks that come to the front of the layout. Section 3 is a simple section containing only 3 lengths of flexible track that run completely behind the scenic breakboard. Section 4 is another complicated section, similar to Section 2, with multiple points and servos needing to be fitted. It also has 3 tracks coming onto the front of the layout. The advantage that Section 4 has over Section 2 is that I've already soldered the complicated track arrangement together. Section 5 is the simplest of the 5 sections and contains only 1 track that heads off over Shelfington Viaduct. To further reassure myself that this is all possible, I've mocked up a small test section that includes all of the relevant parts and is of a similar dimension to one of these smaller sections. I started off by gluing 3mm thick cork to the XPS foam test section. Then I added some example track, which I soldered together, added dropper wires to, and temporarily pinned into position. This allowed me to mark and cut a channel into the cork for the brass tubing to run from the servo to the tie bar. I could then fit a push rod inside the tubing and determine where I was going to fit the servo motor. I decided to try a tricky placement right on the edge of the foam, so marked the position and cut out a slot for one of my enclosure boxes. I temporarily fixed this to the foam using duct tape. Next, I installed the servo into the enclosure box and trimmed the push rod to the required length before making the 90-degree bend required to slot it into the servo horn. At this point, I realised that I was part way to creating a mini diorama that I could potentially use to help me improve my scenic skills before applying them to the main layout. So, I took everything apart and gave the cork a couple of coats of brown emulsion, which would help when it came to adding scenic elements. Next, I reassembled everything, this time gluing the servo enclosure box and track into position. Finally, I wired the servo motor up to a servo tester to make sure everything worked as planned, which I'm glad to show that it did. So there you have it, my plan, with an example of how I intend to install the various sections of the tricky bit. As you can probably imagine, even though I now have a clear strategy, this is going to be a lengthy task to undertake. I plan on working on this over the next few months and will release periodic updates on my progress. I'll also continue to use my test track to film running sessions, test locos and rolling stock, perform experiments and of course play trains, so I still plan to produce videos while dealing with the tricky bit. Okay, so that's about it for this update. Let me know what you think. Alternatively, if you've got any hints, tips, useful tools or techniques to pass on to a beginner in N-Gage modelling, or if you simply want to say hello, then please do so in the comments section. Anything and everything you've got to say will be greatly appreciated. In the meantime, thanks ever so much for watching. Hopefully I'll have another update on my progress soon. Bye.